everything looks good. All right, I'm going to go live. It's Monday, December 21st, 2020. I'm Rim.
I'm Scott.
And this is Geek Nights. Tonight we are talking about the last decade in technology. It's like a mega tech news roundup.
Not really.
Yeah, we'll see. It's it's funny because we did usually we'll talk about this more in the main bit, but we usually skip a lot of episodes around this time of year because we got like holiday stuff going on and conventions, and we kind of bake that into our schedule and our process. And I realized part of the reason why we were struggling to come up with shows is that we weren't skipping shows like we normally do.
We're always struggling to come up with shows.
Oh yeah, but we were struggling more because we usually have some slack at the end of the year where there's like a week or two where we won't do shows.
Anyway, so, normally nothing's happening because we're staying at home doing nothing, but something happened that I got to talk about, right?
All right.
So, my family, long ago, right?
Is this about the tapestry?
No. When the children became adults, right, in the late 90s to early 2000s, right, it became sort of silly to continue to buy gifts for, each other. Right?
Yeah.
So, and also bothersome. So we did like one time we tried to do like a, not Secret Santa where you'd still have to buy a gift, right? But like one of those trading game ones, and it was meh. So that was it. The end. Just, hey, the gift we give to each other is you don't have to deal with any of that gift nonsense.
Yeah.
It's like, fuck that noise, right? Amanda's family still does Christmas with presents or whatever, and they all feel obligated to buy presents for every single other person, and it seems like a big hassle, and what they end up doing is just telling each other exactly what they want and then buying it.
Emily's family is a good middle ground where it's a lot of like low-key gifts that are just like generally nice, but not like... Yeah, not like the traditional, like, here is a present that is a big deal and might be expensive. It's more like...
Well, it's like my family does not, like, never buy gifts. What they do is, like, sometimes they'll be somewhere and they'll see something and they're like, so-and-so would oh my God, look at that. So-and-so would fucking love that. And they'll just buy it.
Oh, it's a trilobite that looks like a boo in a cornucopia. All right.
Right. It's like, and then next time they see that person, they'll be like, here, I got you this, right?
Yeah. That's how our friends all are. Like, we give each other gifts when, like, we find something that is gift-worthy.
Someone will just be like, oh man, I lost my, scarf. It's like, oh, I'll knit you one.
Yeah.
Which one you want, right? So, that kind of thing, right? But there's not this formal must-buy gift holiday thing, right? So, we don't really need or want anything. We have everything we could possibly.
I know that feeling. I mean, you and I we're well off and live in New York. Like,
right, when I get Secret Santas, I'm like, donate to a charity in my name that is not racist or et cetera, et cetera.
Like literally everything that I want, I either have or is not reasonable.
Right. All the things that you could actually get me as a gift are unreasonable to give as a gift. Like, yes, please let me upgrade my, to many $1,000 bicycle with a bicycle that is 5 times more money. It's like, upgrade my computer with one that has 4 3080s in it. You can do that. That works. You can put 4 3080s in one computer, right? You make those, right? It's like, there's nothing. What else could you get me?
Yeah.
Right? I can't even imagine a boat. Get me a boat, right? I'm happy with a boat. It's like, what can you buy me?
Yeah, get me some mansions. Get me a life of idle pleasure.
Get me a DDR machine and a place in which to keep it.
Now, if someone can get me those things, like, yeah.
Sure. So Amanda's mom messages and she's like, the gift that she's getting us was like in the mail and it was many pounds, like 50 plus pounds. So
whoa.
I'm like, uh-oh, there is nothing that weighs that much. That is something that we need and want.
Maybe a 3090. They're 3 slots wide.
Right. I'm like, and we'll go in this house.
The house where I can't record video without tearing down my living room.
This is already trouble, whatever the hell this is, right? So
I'm laughing because I already know the story of what this is, but
I don't know what the dimensions are, right? But anyway, the box shows up and we drag it upstairs. Amanda drags it upstairs. And luckily it's a box in a box. So opening the outer box, I already said, okay, I'm going to open the outer box. I'm going to try to see if I can identify the item simply from the writings and whatever papers are in there, packing slip, something. So I don't have to open the inner box because already good chance of me needing to get rid of this thing, whatever it is, right? So what it was a lot of money, first of all, right? Which is ridiculous. But it's some sort of like automatic hydroponic garden thing, and it's way too big to fit anywhere in our apartment. The idea at its core is not awful.
Oh, that's the kind of thing I would love if I had a house.
Well, the problem is the idea at its core is not an awful idea, right? A little hydroponic system to grow stuff because, you don't have a yard, right? It's like the core idea is good. The problem is the size, obviously, is a problem. The cost is also a problem. It was a gift, but the cost is still a problem because what this amounts to is a pot and a light. It's a pot and a light.
So it's a weed grower. You're gonna grow some weed.
Not that kind of pot. Right? It's like I could go to the garden store, and even if I bought a very good growing light, because there are cheapo ones and fancy.
Oh yeah, we got a cheap one hanging from the ceiling to keep our plants alive in the winter.
Yeah, but if you got a fancy one, it still would only be less money than this thing. And
I mean, ours is literally, I bought a light bulb for $20 and I hung it from a $4 outlet.
Yeah, but I mean, you could buy a good one. It wouldn't be as expensive as this.
Yeah.
And you can get a pot at the garden store for nothing, right? They just got stacks of them. Right?
I mean, usually the pain with that kind of stuff is just like timing it for like what kind of plant you're growing. And
Sure. But that's the thing is you could just, just on your phone, use like your reminders app to be like I actually, just for my crapo plants on the windowsill, I have a Google task that's like water the plants. It just boop, right? What this thing has to justify its enormous price is all sorts of unnecessary technological integrations akin to, remember that juice thing where you'd like
the juicero?
Yeah, you put the bag of fruit and it was like connect to Wi-Fi and squeeze the juice out or whatever. This is like that. It's like it has, I shit you not, it's not an exaggeration. This is why I'm talking about in Tech Day. As Amazon Alexa integration, right? It's got Wi-Fi. It's got like all this ridiculous stuff to like, it can take care of the plants when you're not at home, when you are at home, it can adjust the lights. It's like,
so this really sounds like a weed grower, because the thing I know from trying to invest in that industry is that weed plants in particular, compared to most other plants, are little divas. And if you look at them wrong, they just die. So people need like very controlled environments.
Much like the juicero, it comes with, you can't just like get some seeds and toss them in. It has these proprietary like little seed things you have to buy from them, sort of like coffee cups or some bullshit, right? So they're like these little triangle, like.
Oh, that is very different from what I was imagining.
So basically, at the top of the pot, there's like a plastic. I didn't open it. I just looked at the pictures on the internet. At the top of the pot, I imagine that there is a sort of piece of plastic with holes in it, and you have these sort of cones, and you put the cones through the holes, pointy side down, and the pointy side is now where the seeds are in the water, the hydroponic, right? No dirt, right?
Yeah.
And then it comes, the plant would come out the top of the cone and towards the light that you have, right? So without sort of, I guess you could just get like a cone of some kind that fits in the hole, and as long as the bottom reaches the water and is appropriately has holes in it, you could grow other things you wanted to in there. But you can't just toss a seed in the water, right? It's like, that's just a seed in water. That's not gonna do anything. So yeah, don't buy this thing. But also B, we are now burdened with this giant box taking up a lot of our apartment. Waiting to figure out how to get rid of it. It's not like we can carry it to the post office.
Full disclosure, when we heard this story, we were like, "Ooh, I wonder," like, because we needed a better grow light. But then we looked it up to like see what the deal was, and we were both like, "That can stay at Scott's apartment. That can stay over there."
Yeah. Like getting rid of it is now an ordeal. So instead of giving us a gift, we have been given an ordeal.
At least it's not a great ordeal.
Yeah, I'm hoping that I emailed the company. They haven't gotten back to me. I'm hoping that they will say, yes, some sort of delivery person will come and just take it away. And the money will go back to whoever we want to deal with it. But I don't know what's gonna happen. We'll see.
Yeah, because I think way back when my camera died and I finally had to like ship it back to get a replacement, the only way to actually ship it back was to like go physically to a UPS store or a FedEx.
Yeah, I feel bad though for whatever delivery person had to unnecessarily carry this thing from A to B and now B to who knows where.
Well, it's tough in general. Like the obligation rituals of American society can often be odd.
Yeah, but I mean, like, some delivery person's got to do this, and then how much fossil fuel was wasted transporting this? It's just like, it's just,
Yeah, it was easier when I was a kid. When I was the gifts were like, I just wanted anything.
Yeah,
Didn't even care that much what I got.
I didn't have any money, and I wanted stuff.
Yep.
I don't have any Nintendo. It's like I would go to Toys R Us, and there was a wall of Nintendo games.
And I got to pick one, like once a month, maybe.
Right, maybe. And so it would be like, hey, I want every single one of these. Right? I don't care what, even the crappy ones. I want every single one. So it's like you could never run out of gifts to get me. Just keep buying ones I don't have, and we're good to go. But now I have every NES game that has ever been made in any country ever on a hard drive or on micro SD cards. It's now very silly.
Yeah, so my only recent tech adventure is I actually bought a Fitbit because I wanted a more reliable heart rate monitor.
How is it any more reliable than like Apple Watch? It's
Well, partly
the same it's using the same method the Apple Watch does. Right?
So one, I don't have an Apple Watch. I have Android watches, and
it just shines a light into your arm, right?
Oh yeah,
use a different method.
It's more like what algorithms does it use and how often does it track and everything. But basically, my Android watch was only good for like specific, like I'm going for a run right now, and I wanted to do like more long term, like heart tracking stuff.
It doesn't track when you're not running.
It doesn't unless I turn that stuff on. Like it doesn't.
Oh, the Apple Watch just tracks all the time, but obviously if you do exercise, it constantly tracks for the duration. If you haven't told it you are currently working out, it'll just check it once in a while.
Yeah, that's what this does too.
If you like pay attention, which I never do, but you can actually see the green light turning on underneath.
But the other thing was I realized that Strava at some point seems to have gotten rid of the ability to just connect sensors to it directly. It'll only integrate with like other apps to get heart rate data.
Yeah, I've never tried to connect to it directly.
You used to be able to. You used to be able to buy like a Bluetooth, like whatever compliant heart rate monitor, and it would just work. And they seem to have gotten rid of all that.
I mean, these days I'm doing everything in Zwift, and then Zwift Zwift is done, it just saves its results to Strava.
Yep.
And if I do a non-biking exercise, I just use on the Apple Watch. I just say Apple Watch. Apple Watch will actually tell me. It'll be like, hey, are you walking outside?
Nah.
And I'll be like, you got me. I'm walking outside. And it's like, okay, you want to record this? And I'm like, yeah, fine, whatever. But the only time I would use Strava directly is if I'm biking outside, which not doing too much of.
Yep. But it was interesting because one thing I wanted to see was, it's been a while since I tracked like my heart rate all the time, like overnight into data analysis, and I've been training really hard, like more like this year when COVID. What did I do? I doubled down on getting totally ripped. So I wanted to like actually track like how is that affecting my heart rate long term, because we had a conversation recently among our friends where people were calling into question my current max heart rate and my current resting heart rate. So I wanted to get better data.
You were doing a usual rim, right? Saying something that is technically correct but is also an exaggeration.
So
you're like, yes, my maximum heart rate is this, and it's like that is a heart rate that your heart reached for like one single reading at one moment.
So
right?
Now that I've had this Fitbit and I'm tracking it kind of reliably with the same measure, I discovered that the Android watch I have, not that accurate. This thing is way more consistent.
Okay. I'm actually surprised how consistent the Apple Watch is.
Oh, yeah. I'm sure the Apple Watch would be great. I just don't have an Apple phone.
I now no longer feel it. I was thinking of buying one of the strappy chest ones. Now I don't care.
I would only get a chest one if I was also getting the ones that track chest expansion and compression so I can do more advanced metrics. But you can't use those with Strava anymore, so why bother?
Well, I could use them with Zwift.
Yep. But yeah, I can safely say that my resting heart rate is like locked in at 47 beats per minute, and my sleeping heart rate is like 41.
Okay. Yeah, I don't know my sleepy one because I charge the Apple Watch overnight. So.
Yeah, the part of the thing about the Fitbit is it'll last constantly tracking for like a week because I got the cheapest like no screen like nothing Fitbit.
It's probably not doing anything else.
Oh, it is doing nothing else. It'll show me the time with the screen a little bit, and I can see my heart rate now, and it doesn't fucking do anything else.
but it won't show you like your text messages.
No, it has a notifications thing, but
You wearing 2 watches?
well, actually, I don't know where my Android watch is anymore because about a couple months into COVID, I just stopped wearing it because I'm not going anywhere.
You can't on your phone say "Find my watch" and then your watch will start beeping.
I could, but my watch ran out of battery probably months ago. It's somewhere in the apartment.
Oh, okay.
Notice how I stopped talking about my heart rate for a while? That's because I don't know where my watch is.
Good job. Well, it's not far. So that's good, I guess.
Yep. But mostly the only thing before we get to the actual like tech show, the thing I noticed is Fitbit's all right, like take it or leave it. But what bothers me is that thing I noticed about Strava, and as I poked around, the ecosystem of health-related metrics collection devices just being able to be used with software is getting increasingly siloed and monetized in a way that I am uncomfortable with.
I mean, I'm feeling in the bicycle area, right? There's the Ant Plus standard, whatever, and
Yep.
everything seems to work with that no matter what you get. So I'm not feeling too bad in the biking area, but I guess there might be problems in other areas.
Yeah. Because I'm mostly like running,
All the bike
hiking.
computers, all the bike sensors that I've seen are Ant Plus, whatever it's called, and all the bike computers support them.
Yeah.
And all of the apps that bike people actually use, Zwift, Strava, the other ones that compete with those, right? Ride with GPS, whatever. They're all using the same thing, and they all work together. And I feel like it's in a situation where if any of those apps tried to say, we don't want to work together, we want to do our own thing, everyone would just stop using that.
Yeah, it's mostly what Strava seems to have stopped working with is just use a raw device that doesn't have some sort of other app or service associated with it. Like a raw heart rate monitor.
But at the same time, in the bike computing space, there's pretty much Wahoo and Garmin, and everyone else is, that's it, right? So, but neither of those, the Wahoo apps on your phone don't really do what Strava, Ride with GPS do. They're really just for sort of working with the computer. So they need those integrations. If Wahoo or Garmin made a Strava competitor or a Ride with GPS competitor, which would be hard to do, but they could do it, then they could pull away if they wanted to.
Yep. But basically, that's part of the other reason I got this thing is what I've been using to track all my other health stuff is Google Health. And just I was thinking a lot recently about what's Google going to shut down next? And I don't really trust that any of the Google Fit stuff is going to stick around.
Google Health is so shutting down.
Yeah.
Guaranteed.
So I wanted to move to something that will probably stick around longer. So Fitbit does all the stuff I was using Google Health or Google Fit or whatever for. So
there is something though to say that even though I think under normal circumstances, Google would have shut down a lot of things that it has. I mean, even more than it already has.
Yeah.
Right? Is that anything that is basically a part of Android that is sort of matching a feature of
Yep, like an Android phone will just kind of do some health stuff automatically because that Google Fit exists.
Right, it's like there are things that they have to have on Android because iOS has them, right? So they feel like they also have to have them even if no one uses them, right?
Yep.
So whereas on Apple's side, it's like Apple has all this stuff, and you're like, how many people are actually using that shit? Using the Apple Home automation thing that they have, the Apple iHome or whatever the hell it's called, right? It's like, there's got to be no one fucking using that thing. But Apple keeps it there, and that forces, I guess Google now thinks it has to have that also for some god-awful reason, right? So it's like, and Apple people will never tell you, right? It's like, how many people actually talk to Siri? How many people actually, use the EKG thing that you put in the Apple Watch?
Yeah.
How many people are actually doing that versus you put it there, you talk about it, you forget about it, and it's now just a thing. Whereas, but Apple won't kill those things, whereas Google wants to, but they might not because Apple is there.
Yep, but I'm being cautious with Google on anything that I'm actually relying on.
I back up that shit.
Oh yeah, I've exported all that data out. I got a plan now.
Oh yeah.
Even though it's really hard to get data out of Fitbit too, but I think that'll last longer.
Uh-oh.
Yeah, we'll see. Anyway, you got any news?
What was my news? Oh yeah, really tiny news. So you know how these days you go to some websites and there's banners that say, "Yo, we got some cookies. You want them?" And you can install. I have a plugin in Firefox, a Firefox add-on that hides a lot of those banners, which is nice.
Oh yeah, I should just tell AdBlock, Microblock, just to not show me the GDPR banners.
Right. So this is because of the GDPR law in Europe, right? The
Yep.
General Data Protection Regulation. It's not a U.S. law. So if you're not operating your, business in Europe, if you're like a U.S. only like eShop or something, you don't have to do this. And what's Europe gonna do, right? Just don't take European orders. And
Yep.
you're good to go, right?
And if you do, but Europe isn't a big deal, you see some people who just like block Europe from their site. The end. That's happened actually more often than.
So GitHub is owned by Microsoft now, right? It has been for a little while, and they operate worldwide, as worldwide as they can. Places they're usually the ones getting blocked, right?
Yeah.
Because they're hosting something that the country doesn't want, right? Like software that helps you get through, evil firewalls and things like that. So anyway, so GitHub has removed all of these GDPR cookie banners from its site. Well, they're clearly operating in Europe. They have a lot of users in Europe, and they're a business operating in Europe. They charge money to European companies to use GitHub with their company accounts. So how are they doing this? How did they get rid of their banners? It's really fucking simple how they got rid of the banners. They stopped using fucking cookies.
Oh, the buried lead, the thing no one fucking talks about, that those banners are only there because you're collecting evil data for advertising networks.
Right. So you're actually allowed to have cookies on your site. You're just not allowed to have any non-essential cookies, right? So the cookie that keeps you logged in to GitHub, that cookie's allowed. That's a normal cookie usage, right? If the cookie added some other features to your website, like maybe, I don't know what else you would use a cookie for besides keeping you logged in these days, because there's other ways to do this.
But that's it. Every site that has a GDPR cookie warning is using cookies for nefarious purposes.
Right. GitHub does not send any information to third-party analytics services, right? I guess they're analyzing you themselves.
Yep.
That's just their own analytics, right? They own,
but they can't. No third party can uniquely track you. Only they can uniquely track you to use the website.
GitHub will only ever use cookies that are required, and none to track, display ads, or send information anywhere. And because they're only using cookies, basically to keep you logged into GitHub, right, and nothing else, they don't have to display the stupid banner. So when you see the banner on the website, right, don't just think, oh, this stupid law. It's just like a reminder. It's like you knew this already, but I just want to remind you, right, that it's like, don't just blame this law from Europe, right? Don't just blame. There are other parts of that law we can discuss other times.
Yeah.
That may be good or bad.
That law is it both a blessing and a curse, is my opinion.
But this aspect of the law, the cookie banner aspect, right? You see the banner, you're like, oh, the stupid law put this banner here. It's like, no, that website you're visiting, right? Maybe they poorly designed the banner and made it extra annoying. Maybe that's their fault, right? Maybe, right? But what's really is that website that's putting up that banner is A, operating in Europe, which is why not, right? And B, they are announcing to you they're tracking your ass and selling information about your behavior on that website to someone else.
Yep.
And therefore, if you're going to accept those, right, don't accept the cookies, right? Just try to get rid of the banner without accepting the cookies. Fuck them. And they could get rid of that banner if they just decided that your experience on the website and having you be a happy customer/visitor was more important to them than selling your data to somebody.
Black Dynamite.
So, right. So when you see that banner, right, I think most of the time, myself included, people think, that annoying law, or make this banner go away. You need to think, this is an evil website telling me it's evil website.
Yep.
That's what you need to. That's the first thought you need to think when you see the banner show up. Right? Is this is an evil website that's been forced by law to notify me of its evil ways? Fuck this website.
Yep. Also, a subtle point: you don't have to click accept to use websites. They're not allowed to do that. You can instead click on the banner and go in and actually say, no, don't fucking use those cookies. And they have to comply or they're in deep shit.
Yep, you can basically find some way to get rid of the banner without clicking accept cookies. I don't think I've ever clicked accept cookies once in my life.
No, I don't think I have either. Of course, I usually don't click. I just ignore the banner.
Yeah, I don't remember. I don't know. Can't guarantee that, but I don't remember doing it. And
I guess I could look at my cookies to see what's in there.
Yeah, it's definitely not my default behavior. And yeah, you could always do that if you're worried that you might have clicked it one time. Just delete all your cookies and start over again, log into places.
So we don't really have like there's not enough information for us to talk about the biggest news like deeply, but I just want to touch on it and link to a couple of websites you can read about it. But if you're not aware, SolarWinds got hacked like crazy for a bunch of complicated reasons, almost definitely Russian state-sponsored espionage. Yep. And this is a big deal. Like, this story is one of the most important tech stories of the decade, and it's ongoing. Like, we don't know the extent of the damage from this because it's a big deal and everyone's trying to figure it out.
Yep. So if you don't know, SolarWinds is basically sort of like a Cisco competitor, kind of, right?
Yeah, it's a decent way to...
Ish.
Yeah.
Kind of. You know,
they sell a lot of like,
part.
how do I manage my network and enterprise infrastructure generally?
Yeah, you're like, you know, what
I'm struggling to like, this is literally like the enterprise kind of crap that I built my whole career around.
Yeah, it's like you don't, you know, this is not something that normal people are, you know, concerned about, right? It's like it's only a business thing.
Yeah, like the kinds of person who like knows a lot about SolarWinds stuff is the kind of person who uses like computer associate software or BMC software.
Yeah. But anyway, what happened is in order to log into some SolarWinds stuff, they were using this thing called Duo, which is a single sign-on service, right? Sort of like one login, or even you know, like login with Google is a single sign-on.
Single sign-on is not trivial to implement. There's a reason why there are vendors that provide tools and even hosting to do it.
Yeah, Active Directory, technically, single sign-on solution, right? You know, kind of. But anyway, so what happened is there was some sort of vulnerability where there are these, when you set up Duo, right, on your end, right, you're the company and you're going to say, okay, I want all my employees to log into all of our company systems with Duo. So we're going to set up Duo and we need a private key that we're going to hide from everybody, right, except for us and the Duo company. And then that will be used for, you know, verifying when people log in, right, generating, you know, TOTP, all kinds of secret stuff.
We're trying to avoid like explaining this in detail because it's a little bit esoteric if you don't know how this stuff works.
The point is, if you get a hold of that key, right, the only ones who should have that key are Duo and the company that is using Duo for their systems, right? If someone else were to get that key, you could just log in.
Yep.
As anybody.
In general, having a private key to anything gives you absolute power.
Yeah. So, and Duo, even in their documentation, is like, yeah, don't let anyone get this key, y'all. You'll be boned.
Yeah.
And so SolarWinds was using Duo, and the key got out, and therefore people were able to log in to SolarWinds systems at many companies, and they were able to log in, you know, basically almost undetectedly, because obviously it was detected as almost undetectedly, but basically they didn't need to have the two-factor authentication, right? They were able to just, you know, sometimes you go to a website and it'll be like, okay, tell me your two-factor authentication code. And you're like, remember me for 30 days so I don't have to do this hassle again. And it's like, okay. And the way it does that is with a cookie, not a cookie that will generate a GDPR banner, a normal cookie. And now you don't have to type in your TOTP again for 30 days, right? But if you have the secret key, you could just use that secret key, just make the cookie and just put it in your browser out of whole cloth. You just open up a blank web browser, take the secret key, run some code, go into your browser and be like, you can actually do this. You can go into your browser if you didn't know and go new cookie and just create cookies.
Yep, just type some stuff in there.
You could be like frontrowcrew.com, new cookie, right? Key, your name, you know, value, you know, Joey Jojo Shabadoo. And
in the early days of cookies and web browsing, I would like look at cookies that were on my computer to learn things about websites I might have been interested in messing with.
You can still do that, but
but they used to be a lot more human readable and simple.
Sure, but then you go to frontrowcrew.com and guess what? Your web browser is going to send frontrowcrew.com the information that your name is Joey Jojo Shabadoo. You won't see it, but that data will go over the wire and our web server will ignore it and do nothing with it because it's not looking for that, right? But regardless, you could go in and say, yes, session ID equals a correct working session ID, and you'll just be logged in.
Yep.
You don't have to type in any username, password, TOTP, nothing.
Yep, and depending on the system you're interacting with, you might not even leave like log traces.
Yeah, it'll just look like someone was logged in and doing stuff, and the only way you could like notice that something shady was going on, you'd be like, wait a minute, because you couldn't like make a user. You had still log in as an existing user. You could be like, wait a minute, Rim was logged in and doing stuff from Russia, right? Or from this shady VPN service in, I don't know, an island, right? Something.
Yep. Now, there's a lot of things going on here. Like, there are reports that SolarWinds, their own update server, had a password that was literally like SolarWinds 123, but supposedly that wasn't even used. That was not even used as part of this attack. That was just discovered by accident. Like,
well, it's, once you get attacked, suddenly, the Eye of Sauron is upon you.
Yep. I guess there's three takeaways I think you need. Like, we cannot talk about this yet because there's not enough info. Just read these articles. But number one, probably the single biggest threat to large enterprises and governments, like in the United States, for like hackers and attacks like this, is probably this kind of attack, the supply chain attack. You don't attack the fancy bank. You attack the dumpy ass software vendor that the fancy bank uses to do something boring. Because the bank is going to run that software inside of its network and just trust it in many cases. The second takeaway is, like that password thing we talked about, even without supply chain attacks, I guess the best way to put this is security in most places, like everywhere, is a lot less capable than you probably think, and very much at the edges of these networks. If you get past the edge, you basically get root at that point.
Yep, pretty much.
And the third takeaway...
It's sort of like you can take really good care of your keys to your safe deposit box. Keep them separate and hide them in a really good place. And that does nothing for you if the safe deposit box at the bank has a drop ceiling and someone just comes in through the roof of the bank.
Yep.
Which has happened. I've seen that in the news. That's why I mentioned it. It happened.
Yep. Or like case in point, many of my jobs, I'm an expert in the FIX protocol, this like finance protocol. Like I know a terrifying amount about this stupid protocol. But in the old days, like a decade ago, you know how that protocol was secured? It wasn't. It was plain text. Stock orders and transactions, all this stuff were just ASCII, raw, human readable, being sent over networks with no security at all. Why was that not a problem? Because it was all inside of private networks and private leased lines. So no one really had access to that. But if anyone got inside that network, it was all just there. Get root on any server that interacted with this stuff. There's the whole transaction log. There's everything. So
you can start trading.
Yeah, you could. In fact, I was once in a place where it wasn't me, but someone else, a QA person, accidentally connected to a production connection and sent like $100,000 worth of orders of a test suite out to the market, and they all executed.
Only 100,000. Okay.
Yep. You know how he fixed it? He wrote a script that wrote the inverse of every one of those orders, and we ran it through the same QA pipeline to undo the positions.
Okay.
And we actually made a profit, so it was really funny in the end, but it was also terrifying.
Also, you're fired.
Yeah.
You accidentally made us money, and you're fired. We have to tell the SEC about this.
We did have to tell them about it.
Of course you did. I'm not joking.
Yep. No. It was. I helped write some of the incident report for that. That was early in my capital markets career, shall we say? Multiple jobs ago. But the third takeaway here that I think really needs to be talked about, and it's kind of terrifying that our own government, because of the incompetence of the current Republican administration, is not talking about it. This is a state-sponsored attack on American markets and American infrastructure.
I mean, also world, except the state committing the thing.
Oh, there have definitely, I'm confident similar attacks are going on globally right now, but it is pretty directly clear that the Russian government is behind these attacks. No one seems to disagree on this fact. And I don't think the United States is even like remotely prepared to deal with actual modern cyber warfare.
No, I was trying to tell this to someone the other day. It's like
I was watching that conversation you were having.
It's like if you're a Russian, right? A Russian tech person.
Yeah.
And you are, for some reason, evil and not opposed to your own government, right? You're a Russian who likes Russia.
Yeah, like you're into Putin, like you're down for this.
Or at least you're not, opposed, right? You're
Yeah.
just like, you're cool.
Or maybe, you're terrified of that government and this is a way to not get, there's a lot of reasons someone might do this kind of thing.
I'm saying the only, even me as a tech person, the only reason that I could see not wanting, if I imagine, Scott, would you like to apply for the job, work for Russia, being, engaging in, clandestine espionage via computer? I would say the only thing I don't like about that job is the morality of who I'm working for.
Yep.
There's literally nothing else about that job that I find unfun, uninteresting, unexciting.
That kind of job itself would be super fun. Some of the best fun I had at RIT was that class.
That job sounds fucking awesome, except I'll be working for the bad guys.
My third favorite class in all of RIT was the class where half of us were computer security and the other half were hackers, and then you swap the next quarter. One group, you got to provide a bunch of services. Don't get hacked. The other group, your only job in that class.
As well.
It was a fun class.
Anyway, so obviously there are probably plenty of highly skilled technological people in Russia who are loyal to Russia and are perfectly happy with that otherwise awesome job because they don't consider it to be an evil job the way I do.
Yeah.
Meanwhile, in the United States, right? If the United States was hiring that for position, come to the NSA or the CIA and do clandestine computer espionage for the United States, right? And even if we got rid of all the Republicans and it was only Democrats in both Congress and the president, and it was all Democrats.
Let's even assume magically that is always doing the right thing and there is no ethical question. Magical future world.
Right. They're only asking me to do espionages that I am okay with, right? That I can see are for the good of the world. That job sounds like awful. That sounds like the worst job to work at, right? With all sorts of government bureaucracy bullshit.
The way I've always described this is the U.S. government would never, ever hire the kind of person who is good at that kind of thing.
Right. It's like, and not even, I'm not opposed, the core principle of being a public servant. I'm all down with that, right?
Yeah.
It's just actually being a public servant in the United States, especially for the federal government, is awful, right? It's like there's so much bullshit you got to deal with.
It's like, oh, wait, so I can work way harder.
That in my life.
I can work way harder, make a tenth not a tenth, more like a fifth of what I make now, have to move somewhere I don't want to live and deal with bureaucracy. Yeah, maybe I'll just stay in the private sector.
Right, exactly. And that's why we're getting our asses kicked.
Yeah, but this...
One of the major reasons we're getting our asses kicked.
Yeah, but what I'll leave you with is, and I'm not saying that a kinetic force is what we should do, don't get me wrong, but
no.
American doctrine is that attacks like this, cyber attacks, are tantamount to kinetic attacks. That is an act of war. And we reserve the right as a nation to respond with either cyber attacks or kinetic attacks.
Yeah, I'm pretty sure, that's been true for a while, but I believe that since no one has ever fucking, done that, it's pretty much become a, Yosemite Sam, you're crossing this line. Cross this line, right? Nobody's ever gonna do it. It's not actually true. It's only written on paper as an excuse in case someone actually gets the balls to do it.
But there's something even worse here. There's there's a way worse part of this. Everything we're talking about is they attack the government directly, which happened. The Department of Energy got hacked by this, FYI. And if you don't know what the Department of Energy does, go look it up. Because if you don't know what it does, you're probably going to be really surprised when you find out what it does.
The Department of Energy doesn't handle the power plant.
Yeah, the Department of Energy handles energy.
Big energy.
Yeah, the biggest we know about. Right. Anyway, but the real places where these attacks will happen, even if our government was secure, is all the support structure around our government, the economy itself, private power companies, that whole sector. If you think it sucks to work for the federal government doing IT, imagine working for a power company in Oregon.
Yeah, right. Con Edison's IT.
Yeah, imagine that job.
I see their website and how it works.
Yeah, I see that website. I know what it would be like to be a product manager there.
Okay parts, but it's also obviously not a place I want to work.
Yep. Let's see. Do we got any other important news we should talk about before we get into the main bit?
No.
I think we're good. All right. But anyway, things of the day. So remember a while ago we found the Worth It Kids channel and they had a million great things. So can't just link to them every week.
That was you who found that. I don't think I actually watched it.
You haven't watched Big Top Burger?
I don't remember.
Wow, go watch Big Top Burger. The show is really short.
I might have. I don't remember.
It's about a clown and a bunch of people dressed as clowns working in a burger truck.
I don't think I saw that. No.
It's up your alley specifically. Anyway, so I found another channel like this randomly. This Jewel Haver. But this channel, I just found this video. It was recommended to me by the algorithm. But it was just this like weird, like early 80s looking computer rotoscope kind of thing. And it's called Playing an RPG for the First Time. And it's just this animated comedy sketch of an adventurer is off on his first adventure and he sees a rat and he murders it. And then he sees a ghoul and he murders it. And then he goes into town looking for a quest. And I thought it was going to be okay funny, but about halfway through, it goes from pretty funny to really funny. The voice acting in this is stellar. This is equally funny to some of the Worth It Kids, but for different reasons. This thing was really, really funny to me. I'm not even going to spoil it. It's 3 minutes long. This channel is worth subscribing to based on this video alone.
I actually just, in my mind, as I was thinking of my current thing of the day, a flash came in and was like, wasn't that going to be the thing of the day? But I guess that one will be Wednesday. So, you know me, I like a fossil, but I really like a trilobite fossil.
That's one of the first things I learned about you was that you like trilobites.
Trilobite is a cool looking fossil if you find a cute one.
Yep.
The problem is if you had an actual live trilobite somehow, that would be scary as fuck. Get the hell away from me. Right? But a trilobite fossil is hella cool. So I found this article like a month ago and I dug it up here for my thing of the day today. And it's basically, do you know like the first time anyone saw a trilobite? And it's like, there was this guy in like, you know, some royal collection at like Oxford who noted this fossil. He thought it was some kind of flatfish or something.
Is he Welsh? The Reverend Lud?
Yeah, they don't know if it's like Lud, something like that. Anyway, but he was, you know, credited as...
Yeah, because it's in southwestern Wales.
Yeah, credited as being like the trilobite discoverer, but that's obviously the colonialist interpretation, right?
Yeah.
It's like, he didn't discover the trilobite, right? He's just the first person to, in English writing in the West, you know, make note of it in a scientific journal, right? So that's something, but it's not like a discover, right? And this article really goes pretty interesting, goes into like, yeah, actually, people going way back to super ancient times, you know, these were, you know, Stone Age, right? Think Stone Age, the rocks are real important in the Stone Age. That's why it's the Stone Age, right? People were making things out of stone. They were paying a lot of attention to stones. They didn't have television. They didn't have internet. So they're playing with rocks. They would note and be like, you know what? This rock is a real special rock. It's got, look, it's different. Look at that.
Something in it.
And there were like cave drawings of trilobites, right? And people would make, you know, jewelries out of trilobite fossils and stuff. And it's like the trilobite was discovered way before this dude at Oxford. So really fascinating here. History of the trilobite that I did not know is obvious in retrospect. Trilobites are cool.
All right. In the meta moment, I have not put up the signal. I have not read more of The Tale of Genji.
I thought I was in bed last night, and I'm like, I could do it. I could do it. I don't have to go to work. I don't got to do nothing. I could just do it right now.
You know what I ended up doing? I ended up reading a long article about CIA tactics because I've been watching a bunch of lectures from that woman who did the TED Talk on like CIA disguises, and I went down a deep rabbit hole.
I'm going back to playing that Hades game that I almost beat. I'm just gonna beat it, and then I'll be good.
Yeah, I'm finishing Hypnospace Outlaw. I'm getting near the end.
You think you're getting near the end? You have the eye?
Yeah, that opened up some things. I found some interesting conversations. Some people are some of the characters in this game are worse than I thought, and some of them are actually better than I thought.
Yep. Chowderman.
I pointed some friends at the Chowderman's music video the other day.
There you
the
go.
Christmas one.
Spread the chowder love.
You know what the Chowderman music video from that game reminds me of? the music videos that were on Windows PCs in the multimedia era.
Well, that's what this is trying to be.
Exactly. But specifically Octopus of Love, if anyone remembers that one.
Yes. All right. So yeah, the convention's not happening, at least.
There's going to be like an online Zenkai Con, so we'll figure out. We'll probably do something for that.
I'm going to go to Zenkai Con? Whoa.
Yes, this will be Scott's first Zenkai Con in like a decade.
It's been that long. Huh?
I think the last Zenkai Con you went to, it was still in King of Prussia.
No, I went to one in the other place.
In the Nuke in Lancaster? Yeah, I think.
Once.
Did you?
I went to Lancaster one time. Yep.
I go every year because it's actually my favorite small con. It's also the smallest con I go to.
Lancaster 2 times. It's possible.
I can check the archive. I have that database of every convention performance we've ever done.
Lancaster 2 times, but I definitely went at least one time because there's a comic book store near the train station.
You know what? I actually don't track. Yes, we did because we stopped at that comic book station both years. Or a comic book store by the station. I don't track which of us went to a con. I only track what panels we did. But I can usually derive if you were at a con because you really never do cons without me. But I often do cons without you. And
all right, I'm going to go do a con without Rim now.
Do it. Go for it. Go for it. But
if anyone wants Scott at their con to do a talk without any rims, because you don't need hair, then
invite Scott with that. But then come to me privately and make sure that I'm also there and make me the moderator of Scott's panel.
Don't do that.
That'll be really funny.
It won't be funny.
Someday there will be conventions.
Moderator of Rim's panel.
But for the time being, we're going to be doing online cons only, so stay tuned. If there is an online convention that you would like to see us do something at, especially if you'd like to see us do something other than just pre-record a panel and give it to you,
And the online convention already has enough not white, not straight, not dudes on its roster.
Yep, that is an important point.
That they can afford to add 2 white dudes and still be okay. Then have the convention call us up.
Yep. Otherwise, I don't have any more work the rest of this week, so I'm going to work on some stuff, but I'm not going to say what, so I don't shit talk anything. But I'm working on two projects that you might see the fruits of, and a third project that I ain't saying shit about for another couple of years.
The only things I am actually doing that I can say that I'm doing because I've done them is I am streaming myself solving Advent of Code every day.
Yes, it's some good Scott problem solving ASMR.
I guess, and then I'm biking. I biked again after a little break. I'm biking to nowhere, so you can come and watch a Twitch stream of me biking in place, stationary biking, and talk to me about anything appropriate while I am doing it. For when and if you don't, and there's no times on these things. It's pretty much whenever I feel like doing them. Every day that I'm not working, just on my Twitch channel. You can also come to our Discord, and there is a channel on the Discord that will tell you when the Twitch goes live, and you can click on that.
Yep.
And so.
I haven't been hanging out in that Discord much the last couple of weeks. I've just been really busy, but I'm getting back to my normal life. I got a bunch of work stuff going on that's actually taking a lot of brain power and time. But I'm trying to get back to my normal life of goofing off more and doing more like Geek Night stuff with all of you. So stay tuned. That's all I really got there. Let's just get right to the main bit. We thought we're not going anywhere. There's no holiday travel, so we're actually around for the entire end of the year to do shows. We happen to have exactly 2 weeks left of the year, meaning 1 Geek Nights episode of every day. So a great way to not have to come up with a show, I thought, was let's talk about 2020, what we did in 2020 and what we're looking forward to.
Every magazine and every media outlet in the whole world has these stupid repeating things.
This is why.
Time Magazine's always like Person of the Year. You know why they do that? Because that's one whole issue. They don't have to fucking think about what the title of the cover story is.
Yep. Why do you think I get so excited when Scott lets me do a tech news roundup? It's like, I don't have to do anything. Let's just go find some tech news. Hooray!
Here we go. 4 episodes. You don't have to think about what the thing is. We're just going to do decade and maybe also year in whatever. Right?
Yep.
So in tech, right? 2010 versus 2020, and also I guess 2019 versus 2020, maybe. Right?
Yeah, well, something like that. We'll keep it fluid for the Monday show. We'll see how this goes. But
this is actually particularly easy for me because I moved to New York City in late 2009.
Yep, I also moved to New York City in very early 2010, like the end of 2009, right after you.
So for my life, right?
Everything changed all at once.
It's very easy for me to remember what 2010, this decade was like, because I just have to think about my entire time not working in New York City, which is much longer, but living on my own in New York City,
Yep.
right, is this decade, whereas the previous anything that isn't me living in New York was the previous decade.
Though what's weird is when you think about the fact that the previous decade included the entirety of college and like the first 5 years of Geek Nights.
That's right.
Like us being on the radio in Tokyo.
Yes, that was the previous.
That happened. That was the thing.
That was the thing one time. Yes.
In the ancient past.
I have a wave file for it somewhere.
Yep.
I saw it in my backups. Anyway.
But I also had this idea. I thought, all right, I'm going to go back in Google Photos and scroll back down to like January 2010. And I'm hoping those photos will like jog my memory of like things. I didn't start using Google Photos until 2011. So
I have a better way to jog my memory because luckily, or at least for technology specifically.
Oh, yeah. New egg orders?
No. Luckily or unluckily, right? My apartment in 2010, or maybe 2011, it was early in the decade.
Oh, yeah. You got robbed.
It was burgled. There's an episode about it on Geek Nights. And I had to list all the things that were burgled for insurance purposes because I had renter's insurance. You should get renter's insurance if you rent. Get it today. It's so cheap.
It costs like $1.
If you can afford to rent, you can afford renter's insurance. It's like must have.
You spend more money on losing quarters in the laundry.
Right. I've spent like $100 a year on renter's insurance for 10 years. The one payout is I'm still making a profit. Anyway. What kinds of things technology were
So here's a big one. I can think of a big change that began right in the early 2010s. Like it was actually 2011 when this happened, but Adobe switched from buy our software to we are software as a service, pay us a monthly fee and you'll always be up to date. That was about a decade ago. But I think there's a theme of the decade of this was the decade of a huge amount of software used by professionals shifted to subscription models, and the whole like ecosystem of software as a service completely reimagined itself.
I just think cloud everything in general.
Yep.
Right.
I mean, Creative Cloud. It's in the title.
Yeah, everything clouded, right? You stopped using Microsoft Office, right, and you started using Google Drive.
Yep. Or you started using like Microsoft's Office Cloud thing.
Right. In 2010, what was Google Drive was just like what, like a cute thing that they bought from someone else, like Google Docs. It was.
I wonder what my oldest file even is on Google Drive. Let me do a query.
Yeah. It's like everything moved to the cloud.
Like I moved everything I do to the cloud for the most part. I like changed how I do backups.
It wasn't just like Flickr where it's like, okay, you have your local file collection and you share it on Flickr. It's like, no, now your file collection is just in.
Yep. The 2010s was the decade where I shifted to almost everything I do is either software I subscribe to or a web browser.
Yep, pretty much. But here in 2010, right? The game console that I had was a Wii and maybe an Xbox 360 that I barely used.
We both bought those Xbox 360s and then got rid of them.
Yeah. So that right, the 4K was not a thing in 2010, right? The 2010s was 4K going from basically in the beginning part of the decade, only maybe like ultra professional TV movie people could have any 4K fucking anything. And now, like GoPros have had 4K since forever. I bought the GH4 this decade, which was like the first, like, consumer, almost consumer, like highest end, but still consumer possible prosumer camera. And it could record 4K video. It was like the first one, basically.
Yeah.
And now every camera has 4K. Like the cheapo GoPros have 4K. They've had them for years, right? 4K TVs are not ridiculous. 4K monitors are not ridiculous.
I'm looking at 2 4K monitors right now doing Geek Nights. I bought them recently.
Right. People have people have very high resolution screens, even if they're not 4K. The pixels now are so small. At the beginning of the decade, 1080p was like the best, right? It was like, yeah, 1080p's, fuck yeah, right? Now 1080p's like,
yep.
Right.
This was the decade where 16 by 10 as an aspect ratio just finally disappeared completely. Rest in peace. I miss you. The world standardized on 16 by 9 but you know what I noticed with computing shifted to like tablets for one thing, but monitors are all 16 by 9 or the ultra wide gamer format, and laptops shifted to whatever fucking weird aspect ratio just to make the hardware good. No one cares.
Yep, pretty much.
Like laptops are all weird aspect ratios, which would have messed with my early 2010 sensibilities, and I just don't care in the 2020s.
Now, the smartphone, was really originated in the previous decade with the Palm Trio, the other Palms.
Yep.
iPhone is from 2000.
I got my first smartphone in like 2000.
First iPhone 2006 or 7.
I don't remember.
The iPod Nano was 2005.
I want to say it was late 2008. I got my first smartphone ever because my work gave me a modern BlackBerry, like a one that actually had web browsers and stuff.
Very last decade Blackberries.
Yep.
But if you look at the numbers on smartphone adoption, while they did exist, there were iPhones in the late 2000s. They were numbers-wise, they were only the domain of the wealthy, the tech enthusiasts, the well-connected, the I guess elite, whatever you want to call it, people like me.
Yep.
Who had a lot of money. Those are the only people who had like iPhones. By the way, with 3G only, right? In the late 2000s, it was only in this decade that everyone has a smartphone. Everyone has 4G, right? 4G didn't really exist in the late 2000s.
Yep. Like we went from smartphones are this playground and people like really rely on Wi-Fi or specialized tethering devices to like people have replaced their computers with smartphones.
Yep, people just don't have computers anymore, and that goes hand in hand with the cloud thing, right? Is that it used to be that you needed even though you had this other smartphone-y stuff, right? Those first smartphones, you would plug in your iPhone to your computer to sync it with iTunes, right? It couldn't do its own thing. It couldn't live on its own. Whereas we went from that to, well, everything's in the cloud, so really your computer doesn't matter. You're not storing anything locally. You can just throw your computer in the garbage as long as you erased it, for safety's sake, right? Get a brand new one and be up and running so quickly because all you do is log into all your services and you're good to go. Nothing's on your computer anymore, right? Your software's not on your computer anymore. And that was like this dream that they had in the 90s or 80s or even older of this sort of networked computer. And that's actually what they started with, right? The mainframes, you would just be at a terminal. And so what they were thinking with like, thin clients and stuff, right? In the 90s, 2000s was like, hey, you're going to have a computer. And I guess the Chromebook was also sort of attempting to do this. You're going to have a computer that's really just a terminal, and all the work is going to be done by CPUs in the cloud, right? You're going to do nothing locally. But what ended up happening was simply absconding, right? Sort of repurposing the web, right? And web APIs as a way to, okay, you still have a local CPU that's doing a bunch of stuff, but most of your data and the software is on some other computer, and we're going to send you part of the software to run locally, but not all of it. And so you're getting that effect, right? But not necessarily the original imagined implementation of the, client-only computer, right?
I think in general, though,
that all happened in the past 10 years.
Yeah. So computer workstations, like an actual, like full-on PC, as much as they decline in terms of normal people using them, people who don't have like a purpose for them as a tool or a gaming PC or whatever. We saw the we'll talk about this more on Tuesday next week, the fall of and then like ultra renaissance of PC gaming. Like PC gaming in the previous decade before the 2010s was in coming into a really bad state. And like it had
a lot of ups and downs, but it's like it always exists. So it can never die.
Yep. Right? But it exploded over this past decade, coupled with it's easy to forget, like the beginning of this decade was an era where Intel was the undisputed master of computer chips. Mm-hmm. Like that was like the end of the Nehalem era and the beginning of the Sandy Bridge era. Like that was when we went from don't waste your money on an Intel to fucking don't buy anything but Intel for the love of God.
Yep.
It'll boot on the first try. Works every time. Like that was a sea change for me and how I worked with computers. Computers became like
now I don't know if I'm gonna buy another Intel. This one's gonna last a long time. The one I have, the size.
But it's hard to remember that the 2000 to 2010 computers, unless you had a lot of money, were still fickle and unstable. And the 2010 through 2020 computers, like desktop workstations, are so rock solid. Even if you get like an AMD, like they're fine. They're easy to build. People can build computers without knowing a lot about computers. That happened during that decade. Like that whole decade was like that.
Yeah, we started with Windows Vista. Now we got Windows 10.
Yeah.
All those other Windowses were in between there, whatever.
Storage too. I'm trying to think about what kind of storage I had in 2010, but
yeah, let's talk about right. So we went from there were SD cards in the 2010s because in the late 2000s because I had a crapo digital camera, right, the little pocket Canon Power Shot, whatever, and it took an SD card. But I think that SD card was maybe like, I don't know what the maximum size was, like 4 gigs, maybe 16 gigs at the most. Like it was not big
yep.
At all. It might not even been that big. I might just be
and like USB flash drives went from critical to why do you even own one over the course of this past decade?
Let's see, best SD card 2009. Can I even find this?
Yeah, I usually just look at what was I buying in 2009.
Which flavor of SD? Yeah, 4 gigabyte, something like that. 8 or 16. Yeah, 4. So in 2009.
All right, so like 4 minutes of a GeekNights panel.
Right. So in 2009, you could get like 16 gigs would be like a big one. 32 was like the biggest expensive mega one. Like if you had a camera that shot RAW, right?
Yep.
Most people, I guess, were using compact flash then because the SD wasn't big enough.
Yep, like the Marantz. The Marantz takes compact flash still.
Right. Now, so I think that 2010s were clearly the rise of flash memory, not just SD, micro SD, right? But also M2, right? M2 basically didn't exist as a thing.
SSDs were still like, oh, if you're fancy, put an SSD in your computer.
And they weren't that big either.
Nor were they actually that fast.
The density of flash memory absolutely exploded this decade, and now you can get, ridiculously large storage, right?
Yep.
You can get like an iPad. You can get an iPad, I think, with like a terabyte of storage. I think an iPad Pro. Is there a terabyte option? Let me see. Hold on. This big ones is the.
I mean, the computer I have now that I built several years ago, like 5 years ago at this point, I bought a 1 terabyte M.2 NVMe drive.
If you buy an iPad Pro, your choices are 128, 256, 512, or a terabyte. So big flash storage is taking over the world.
Yep.
Right? Tiny micro SD cards. We started off last decade with like a regular old fucking USB. I don't even know. Do we even have micro USB? I think we might only had mini.
I think we only had mini. I don't remember, but yeah, I feel like we only had mini.
But anyway, the point is micro, but now USB-C.
Yep.
Took over.
Like micro is it. We moved to an era where micro is like the cheap option for like crappy stuff and stuff that doesn't matter, but everything's USB-C now.
Yep. Yeah. Camera sensors. I already talked about 4K, but that's not just the screens, but I just want to say also the cameras, right? Cameras at the beginning, you get a digital camera from 2010 and compare it to 2020, it's like chocolate and shit. Right?
Yeah.
It's not even close.
I mean, I think about the camera we used to use to record GeekNights compared to what I got now.
The camera that you get in an iPhone today, even a low-end iPhone today, is better than a Canon Multi-D Mark whatever from 10 years ago, right? The camera obviously also has advantages that the iPhone won't have, but I'm talking about just like the image, sensor, right? Just unbelievable advancement in that area.
Oh, well, yeah. In 2010, I bought a 4 gigabyte USB flash drive, USB 2, so slow as molasses, and I spent $10 on that thing.
Dang.
4 gigabytes of very slow storage.
Mm-hmm.
But it's not just that like storage like that got bigger. It's that how people use storage changed a lot. Like we went from you put files on USB sticks and pass them around to everyone just transfers files directly via the cloud.
Yep, pretty much.
Like I have, what I used a USB stick for recently? I have a cheap car to get through COVID if there's emergency travel. It has a USB hole in it. I put a USB stick in that hole, it'll play MP3s on that USB stick.
There's better ways to do that, but that's a way.
Yeah, it's a way that car supports natively because that car's from 2012.
Yeah. So what was I going to say? There was something else. Oh, what was that? Oh my God, why did it just slip my mind? So bad. Talk about something while I try to remember. My stupid
All right,
brain.
so let's talk about some other big changes that have happened, especially in technology that affects us. Like I think about how we record GeekNights. We saw the final death of Firewire. Like, Firewire is finally gone. And there is professional audio equipment that uses modern stuff. Like USB-C has basically actually finally replaced Firewire. And I went from having this giant Mackie mixer to now I have this tiny little 1U thing that does like everything that Mackie did and more. Is just better in every way. Just plugs in with USB-C, just works. Like the GeekNights pipeline has gotten so much tighter. And the other thing related to that, we went from it is a gigantic, difficult, expert pet task to stream any video to anyone to OBS exists and streaming is trivial and free for people to do.
Yeah, we were using like Ustream, right? Or whatever.
Oh my God. We did a live stream. When did we do that? I think that was actually 2007 we did that stream.
Something like that.
But streaming was hard. Like, think about when did we start streaming GeekNights live? Kind of recently during this decade because it was kind of a pain in the ass until pretty recently.
So for consumer technology, right? I think the absolute biggest advancement in any single like narrow thing and versus its impact on the entire world is it wasn't invented this decade, but the advancement of the lithium-ion battery.
Oh my God.
And the last 10 years is basically behind everything else, right? It's like, you know, I'm not a fan of the electric car, not a fan of any car, right? But you got your electric car basically was not a thing 10 years ago. Now people just drive them around like it's no big deal.
Yep.
You got your every single device you have that you walk around with being not super heavy, lasting a long time, right? All these things, even if the chips they all kept up with all the chip advancements and every other area, right, that we've, you know, advanced in. If the lithium-ion battery had not advanced, it's like Apple would be like, well, we made this really tiny Apple Watch with this tiny amazing screen and this tiny little CPU. Mm-hmm. But the battery lasts 10 minutes. It's like, or it's as big as your arm. It's like,
yep. Like I got to the point to where I have a power. It
burns your arm.
Like I have a powerful laptop that I can play like Civ 6 on for like 4 to 6 hours before I have to plug it in. Like that's kind of amazing how far that advanced from like how desperate I was for there to be holes if I was on like a plane or a train. Like by the time there was an outlet on those two things I could plug computers into, I didn't need that outlet anymore.
You know, and obviously all these technologies that we've been talking about have horrifying capitalist externalities.
Oh yeah, you want to talk the biggest theme of the last decade is technologies converged on a singularity of cyberpunk dystopia.
Yes, but I think the lithium, right? The need for the world's desire for lithium going up has maybe caused more damage than any of the other things.
Yep.
Right. It's like, yeah, horrifying. They're
well, not just lithium, it's lithium and rare earth metals. Like there's a small number of things we need to drive this stuff.
Is like the elephant in the rare earth metal room, right?
Yeah.
Because it's like, it's like, okay, yeah, they're mistreating workers in a factory making phones. That's horrifying and the worst. Right? It's like, where do you see where the lithium comes from? It's even more horrible, right? It's like, and that lithium is in everything, right? And like almost like it's rare that you would even want to buy something. Like, what do you need in life that you don't already have unless it's powered by a lithium-ion battery?
The one thing I have appreciated about this is that we also saw, because lithium batteries got better and because like the software and the understanding of how to manage them got better, a lot of things converged to the point to where a lot of stuff now charges in a standard unified way via USB. Like who would have thought over the last decade that USB would become the modern power outlet for most things?
Mm-hmm.
Like I didn't think USB would be it.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. So yeah, I guess obviously, the Twitter, we talk about the dystopia, right? Twitter existed in the late 2000s.
Yep.
Facebook existed way before then.
Who would have thought that Facebook would rise to cause possibly more damage to American society than any other social technology? I mean that seriously. Facebook should be shut down.
None of those things really took off and became world-conquering, world-owning things until this decade, right? It's like they existed last decade, but they were pretty much the realm of like computer people, right? It's because of the battery, the phone, the cloud. That was the the only platform which could skyrocket those existing things to be more than what they were, right? They were, you know, maybe not completely innocent, but relatively innocent in their, you know, young days. But that platform that we invented this decade is what allowed those things to just conquer the entire world and ruin us all.
Well, I'd say in general technology, like if you look at like 1990 through 2000, you know, the information age, like internet went from not existing for any practical purpose for normal people to existing, but wasn't like fully realized yet. And there was a lot of ideas about like what we could do with it, but it wasn't quite there.
Space outlaw.
Yep. The 2010s was like, all right, we're building, like the 2010s where we build all this stuff and we almost discovered that humans might not have been ready to be able to talk to each other all at the same time. It might literally be that humans are not ready for that technology. I said this a decade ago, and I think I was right. Not that it was hard to be wrong about this, that social technology like this and the idea of like mimetic warfare would become real. Here we are. Our news was literally about hacking and like cybersecurity. Meme warfare became real in a literal sense this decade. And I don't know what's going to happen. Like, I can't even predict. Like, that space evolved more between 2016 and 2020 than it did between 2016 and like 1916.
Right. So it's like on the one hand, it sort of feels like, man, technology doesn't move anymore like it used to, right? Because we had huge movements, right? We went from, you know, CD to MP3.
No, I went from like, cassette, 8-track to cassette over the course of like a decade, but cassette to CD to MP3 to nothing. Like I just stream stuff. That went by like lightning.
Right. Also, because of the cloud thing, right? We went from MP3 to stream this decade.
Yep. We killed physical media except for collectors and nerds and people who don't have access.
And people who really just insist on principle and like
collectors and nerds.
Down. Just pirate it. Come on.
Piracy didn't get destroyed. Piracy kept plugging along at about the same rate it always has.
Oh yeah, absolutely.
Nature. Well, I mean, life finds a way.
Sure, obviously. But you know, if you think it's like, even though there were these huge, society-shattering advancements in technology in the 2010s, right? Like what we said, where we started and where we are now, it feels like it's slower because those changes are like more incremental. It's like, we've replaced this USB with USB-C, whereas before we were replacing like serial cable with USB.
Or we replaced nothing with cell phone, and then we replaced cell phone with smartphone.
Right. It's like, you know, they're meaningful upgrades we're getting, but we're still getting, and they're just as earth-shattering. But when you just look at them on face value, right? It's like you look at 2000 versus 2010. 2000 was like, Motorola StarTech, and 2010 was like iPhone 4, I want to say, right? Maybe iPhone 4, 20.
But like the difference between USB 3 and USB like 3.1 is almost earth-shattering by itself.
Right. But then you look at like iPhone 4 from 2010, I think that's right, versus iPhone 12, and it's like, oh, that's not actually that huge.
Yep. Well, part of this is there's a trailing edge of some of what happened this decade is brand new technology is extremely destabilizing. And even though, like you said, we have this perception it's moving slower, it's actually moving faster and faster. The rate of change is accelerating. But there's this lagging indicator of people are adopting the technology that came about in the beginning of this decade.
Exactly. We are way ahead of the curve. The curve, right, that we hit in the 2000s, we had all this stuff.
Yep.
That stuff was adopted by the entire world and then polished in the 2010s.
And that is where a lot of this earth-shattering societal change happened. It wasn't someone invented social media. It was a critical mass of humans have access to social media.
Yeah. All the things we invented in the 2000s, the 2010s, wasn't about inventing new things as much as it was about deploying the inventions of the previous decade to all humans who could possibly access it.
Yep.
Right. And then making it easier and, incrementally making it nicer and nicer and nicer because so many people have it. Well, now there's more money in it to do that part. Right.
So something that's actually stuck out in my mind the last couple of months, partly because I'm at home a lot, so I'm watching a lot of documentaries and reading more just like nonfiction and science, it is easy to forget that in the last decade, a terrifying number of scientific discoveries and advancements have happened that are kind of literally pushing into understanding the nature of existence. There are things that we just think we know that, were literally discovered this decade. Quantum physics
about like teleporting photons and shit. All that stuff happened this decade.
Yep. We've discovered more about space in the last decade than possibly the previous 30 years. And it's easy, like, we almost have this, and I say we as like society, especially American society, even like nerds like us, we're very guilty of it. The example I always use is, doesn't it feel like Pokemon always existed? Like, Pokemon's been around forever. You almost, like, your brain will almost make up memories of,
around since the mid to late 90s -ish.
Yeah, like, I was in high school and Pokemon was invented. Like,
yep, pretty much, yeah.
But it's easy to think, oh yeah, this quantum physics thing, that just seems obvious. Like, yeah, we knew that, 100 years ago? It's like, no, we learned that thing 4 years ago. No one knew that before 4 years ago.
Or at least someone had written it as a theory, and that was in it floating around in your mind. But then the experiment that proved it, right, is like happened here.
Yep, but we're also...
A Large Hadron Collider was 2010s.
But
right?
Some of these discoveries, talk about that trailing edge. This decade was a huge advancement of material science and quantum mechanics. The next decade is going to be not the mass market societal adoption of technology using that, but the early practical applications of some of that advancement. Right. The danger is that those advancements are almost too powerful and too dangerous, and the only people who will be able to leverage them in the next decade are megacorps and states.
Yeah. I mean, the perfect example of material science, I think, is carbon fiber, right? If you look in the 2000s, carbon fiber was like this thing you saw someone making in a lab, right, for some, or maybe it was, and then it was on like an F1 car or something, which it still is.
You see like a concept for a carbon fiber bike.
Yeah. Right. And now, well, I mean, I think there were carbon fiber bikes maybe in 2000s, but the point.
But they were not accessible.
Right. It's still not cheap. But now, if you have money, you can just get carbon fiber, whatever. You can get a carbon fiber camera tripod. You can get a carbon fiber, backpack. You can get a carbon fiber fucking anything, right? So whatever there are other fancy materials we're seeing.
Oh, the first carbon fiber bike wasn't until the late 80s, and it was bespoke. Yep.
I mean, they like I'm saying, they existed, but like now.
But now you go to a bike shop, like every bike has a carbon fiber fork at least.
Yep, all of them, pretty much, right? It's all over the place.
Yep.
But
and that ties to like the thing that this sounds dumb, but I've thought about this whole decade because I travel a lot. I always, like, my whole adult life, a lot of my career has been traveling. And the thing that has stuck with me is you can tell when there are big advancements in material science when things get thinner and smaller to the, like, and planes, seats and armrests and backrests and like all that like boring stuff you don't think about, we're able to get thin enough to like cram additional rows of seats into planes without reducing the space people have access to.
Because they're assholes.
No, yeah, they did also reduce space, but some of that change was because the seats could literally be thinner because material science had advanced to that point. Material science advanced to I keep saying terrifying degree, but it's kind of true, in the last decade in ways that are not obvious to people who don't work in these fields.
Right. So now it's hard to see a decade out, right? Because, it's hard to see. But what I can see in the more immediate future, we're talking about the chip war, right? That's happening, right? I still believe everything I've said about chip wars so far, and that's going to have a huge impact. I think something else, you have to look at, what you have to do is you have to look around and you have to be able to see, right? It's like we look at like an iPod, right? An original iPod Classic. And you look at an iPod Classic today, the first iPod, and you say, wow, look at that chunky, ugly boy. Right?
Yeah.
But when it was new, it's like, wow, that's fucking amazing, right? It didn't look chunky at all. It didn't look stupid that it was making a bunch of noise with the spinning hard drive in it.
Yeah.
It didn't look stupid that its hard drive was small or anything like that, right? It looked perfectly amazing. But only in retrospect does it look chunky and bulky, and obviously there was so much room for improvement.
Yep.
So you have to do is you have to look around at things that seem to you currently as normal and great, but actually they're chunky boys in 2020, and they can be shrunk down. So the chunky boys that I see right now,
CRTs for me. well, not CRTs, monitors, like LCDs, because CRTs couldn't really shrink beyond a certain point, but LCDs, when like they were pretty thick at the beginning of this decade, and now like even a pretty cheap LCD is crazy thin.
I'm talking about things that are chunky in 2020, right? Can you see something now that looks normal now, but is actually in 2030, you're going to look at it and say, right? So the things I see are the phones that fold,
Yep.
right? Screens that bend. Screens that bend, they're going to make the screens, because now they're selling them. They're selling them in the store right now. So in 10 years, you're going to have the screen that bends, I think, is going to be the real, like super thin, like in your bag. Like the tablet is just going to be like floppy, like floppa, 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 right? It's not going to be like a rigid rectangle. You can roll it up. You can whack a fly with it, right?
Yeah.
It'll be fine. Something like that. The other thing I see that's really chunky, again, in the battery department, you look at like e-bikes, right? You know, the lithium-ion battery applied to so much transportation, not just cars, bikes, scooters, all those things, you know, drones, all 2010s, right? The e-bike is of 2020, 2030 is going to look like not an e-bike. Because
I think the e-bike
chunky. Right now, the e-bike, it's like a chunky thing stuck on your down tube, right?
Yep.
It's just not. You're not gonna. It's not gonna be there. It's gonna look like a bike.
I think I'll be even broader. I think e-bikes over the next decade are going to become an ubiquitous and critical part of transportation infrastructure in cities and suburbs.
Hopefully. Well, that depends on policy, not on technology.
Well, Biden at least, the cabinet pick is
there for that.
Yeah, the cabinet pick for transportation seems down for this, so we'll see.
Well, you know, he's half there, right?
Yeah.
You know, he's a compromised dude. But yeah, there's those are the only chunky boys that I can see in my immediate eyeball that come to mind.
Yeah.
Right?
And that's over the course of this decade, because we've gone on way long, so we can probably wrap this up soon. But my relationship with technology, I used to have to carry a lot of devices, and I used to have to like think about how will I do X in location Y. And I used to have to still plan a little bit for certain kinds of events.
Carrying a big tub of stuff.
Yep. I don't carry
less and less and less stuff.
I don't carry like anything with me anywhere anymore. And I always have access to everything.
You can pay with your phone now, for real.
Yeah.
Just pretend like, oh, that'll never happen. Nope. I do it at the grocery store.
Yep.
Every freaking time. So, you know.
So hopefully we don't descend into an even deeper cyberpunk dystopia, but I don't know if we can avoid it in the near term.
So I guess we're not going to talk about just 2020 or just this year.
We've already gone on for almost like an hour and a half here.
All right, that's all right. The rest of the episodes will be decade only.
Decade only.
Right, we didn't do any other year, right? So decade only. And I guess we missed our first opportunity in 2010, but
yeah,
we'll do it again in 2030.
All right. So Wednesday, we'll talk about animation and anime and comics for the last decade.
Exciting.
Yeah.